Am I a victim of my skin when black is the skin that I live in? When you appraise my home, you undervalue me. You heard that a black family wants a new home, and you claim that it will bring the value down. So you convince that homeowner to sell that home cheap, because the truth is you don't want blackness around. Your money goes up, but your love goes down. Enough is enough. Don't cheat me out of my home. Enough is enough. Don't undervalue my life. My home is my health. My health is my wealth. Oh. Enough is enough. Enough is enough. As I walk around this city, I see how gentrified it's become, pushing their black families further and further away. They say, black man, you don't belong here. You aren't allowed to live in this area. This happened in history, and it's happening today. Enough is enough. Don't cheat me out of my home. Enough is enough. Don't undervalue my life. My home is my health. My health is my wealth. Well, yeah. Enough is enough, yeah. Can't run me out of my city. Don't undervalue my life. My home is my health. My health is my wealth. Yeah.
Hey,
Enough is enough.
yeah, we're gonna let you in a minute.
Oh, okay. As long, okay, then I'll just wait.
Okay.
Excellent, thank you. That's great. That was some incredible, inspiring music. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. That was the great Miss Stephanie Woodford, and Dr. Honeycutt, who's on this meeting and who is helping put these workshops together. We'll tell you more about her in a minute, but she's an incredible singer, and we just wanted to open up with that. I'm Thor Kozlowski. Tonight, I'll be helping facilitate the meeting this evening. You'll hear more about everyone else who's on this call as well, but I just wanted to identify a few people who you'll hear more from Dr. Honeycutt about. But we have Dr. Veronica Honeycutt, one of the authors. She is the author of one of the runaway hits, Straight Talk, which is targeting information for young black men to understand how they can live the righteous way in life. And you need to pick up that book and check that out. But she's here hosting these workshops. We have Mary Rivers, who's helping facilitate. We have Edgar Palacios. He's helping behind. My goodness, that was on mute. I apologize. Let me start over. Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm Thor Kozlowski. I'm going to be helping facilitate tonight's event. This workshop is being put on by Dr. Veronica Honeycutt, the author of the runaway hit, Straight Talk, which is a book targeting young black men, giving them really critical information about how they can live a righteous life and stay on a straight path. So please check that book out. Dr. Honeycutt will tell you more about that in a minute, but she's here this evening. We have Miss Mary Rivers, who's helping facilitate, and as well as Edgar Palacios, who is behind the scenes helping us with technical support. Tonight's meeting and workshop will be key speaker, fabulous Taunee English. Dr. Honeycutt will tell you more about her in a minute. And of course, Dr. Joe Canton, who many of you may know, who is going to be the moderator and interviewing Taunee this evening. I just wanted to again acknowledge the music we were listening to, incredible, inspiring music. We wanted to kick off with Stephanie Woodford. And we'll hear more about her and this young lady and how her music is inspiring so many with her words and her melodies. So with that, I just want to go maybe to the next slide. Edgar, if you can advance it. I just want to let you know for tonight's meeting, just some of the environment that we're in with Zoom. Everyone is going to be muted when you come in. And if you come off mute, if you could just stay on mute so we don't have background noise for the speakers, so you can hear everybody clearly. The chat box in the bottom of your screen is the way that we're going to be asking questions of Taunee and Dr. Canton or Dr. Honeycutt if she's going to be responding to things. But if you have questions or comments, please put them in the chat. And you don't need to wait till the end. Tonight, there'll be a Q&A towards the end after the interview. You don't need to wait if you hear something or want to say something, just put it in. And toward the end, Mary and I are going to facilitate the question and answer period. So I wanted to let you know about that. Also, all the links that you'll be hearing about or seeing will be put in the chat. There'll be contact information for Taunee. There'll be contact information for Dr. Canton and also Dr. Honeycutt. And so with that, Dr. Honeycutt, I want to turn it over to you to greet your fabulous audience here.
Thank you very much, Thor. Good evening and welcome, everyone. Tonight we are discussing racism in housing. I want you to know when you put information in the survey, we listen. Now, we listened to your suggestions about topics you wanted us to cover, and you listed housing as a major topic of concern. So we're discussing racism in housing with a brilliant woman and as always, the equally brilliant Dr. Joe Canton. Before I introduce Dr. Joe Canton, our moderator, and Ms. Taunee English, our guest speaker, I would like you to think about the information that you saw in terms of Stephanie Woodford. She is a brilliant, young, and talented songwriter. She's also my mentee, okay? You know, I love working with young people, as you all know. Now, at her tender young age, she is a jazz and pop musician, singer, and composer. I'm gonna go over some of those points on that slide because I wanna make sure you got this. Graduate of the San Francisco Conservatory of Music, Preparatory Division, and St. Ignatius College, Preparatory High School. Graduate in music recently from City College of San Francisco. And while she was in high school, she released her big band song, Keep It Moving. She was the only student in the history of St. Ignatius who had her original composition played by the jazz band. And you saw the reference there for, in February 2019 and February 2020, she was selected to play her music at the for the UCSF Black Caucus. Now, I want you to understand what this young woman did. She wrote the lyrics, she wrote the music, she did the performance on a piano and vocals. All of that was done by Stephanie. That's what a great talent she is. I just want to call that to your attention. We got some wonderful young people out there. And I want to give credit to Stephanie and her wonderful father, Mr. Stephen Woodford, for being supportive of the Honeycutt Foundation and what we are doing in terms of our racism workshops. So we are blessed to have her performance of Enough in this show. I know that touched your hearts. Now, redlining, racist exclusion, unfair housing practices within real estate, housing, and banking, All of this and more will be discussed tonight. And so I start with information about Dr. Joe Canton, our moderator. He's a featured facilitator and professional public speaker known throughout the United States for his brilliant analysis on race and other key issues. He is an administrator, a consultant, an educator, an entrepreneur, and president of Canton Associates. Now, he has earned an MA from Occidental College in Urban Studies and a PhD from UC Irvine. He is also a former Coro Fellow. Our guest speaker, our outstanding guest speaker, Ms. Taunee English, has so many things that she's done. It's all before you there. I'll try to highlight some of this, but if I work with what Taunee has done, I'll be here for another 40 minutes. So I'm going to cut through this and say she's the broker, associate, and branch manager of eXp Realty California, Inc., has over 15 years of selling all kinds of property, not just houses, single family houses, but multifamily houses, commercial, and all the way from commercial to businesses. She was the 2019 Realtor of the Year in Los Angeles. She is the 2021 chair of the Communications Advisory Committee and state director of the California Association of Realtors. She ran a CPA firm and provided business management services. So she's been involved in a multiplicity of different jobs and responsibilities. And to cap it off, she is featured in the 2020 Modern Luxury Angelino magazine as what else? As a woman of influence. Now, there's one other point that I want to say about Miss English. She's a consummate professional, okay? Now, in short, she's amazing. We're blessed to have her as our guest speaker tonight. And so without further ado, I'm turning this program over to Dr. Joe Canton.
Thank you, Dr. Honeycutt. Thank you for that great introduction, and particularly great introduction of our guest. I'm honored to facilitate this process with her being a part. And in keeping with our theme, racism in housing, I'll take a statement from Dr. Neely Fuller, who says, racism, if you don't understand what it is, how it works, everything else you know will confuse you. So tonight, our goals are simple. We want to clarify and define your individual responsibility for solving racism and purchasing and owning a home. We want to emphasize that you as an individual can take action. You can be proactive in the process so that you become familiar with the process where you can be successful. And one of the things we need you to do, we want to emphasize that you need to begin establishing personal goals in developing a comfort zone, not only in discussing racism in housing, but develop a comfort zone in dealing with financial institutions, because many of us tend to be intimidated by that institution. So we can do those things today and get you into that process. Then we're moving forward to make things happen and action. And action is one of the things that we want to do here in this program, so that you know that non-action is not an option. Next. So before we get started, there is a short video that will be played. It's 4 minutes, and you won't get bored because it's going to share a good approach and understanding what we're dealing with. So if we have the video, please, we'll move forward.
Secret that home ownership is the pathway to building wealth in America. But what's hard in the Bay Area is even harder for some.
And tonight, a look at the growing inequity in home ownership rates in the Bay Area. ABC 7 News race and culture reporter Julian Glover has the story of a Marin couple who almost got cheated out of $500,000.
You know what I mean? It was work, but it was exciting.
Paul and his wife Tanisha Austin felt like they captured a slice of the American dream in 2016 when they purchased their first home together, this original Marin City pole home. But it wasn't without challenges.
As soon as like a house came on the market, you go in, you put your bid in, and then you can outbid it by like 100,000 or more rather quickly. And that can be, you know, a little bit depressing.
They bought the home off market from another black family hoping to make homeownership a reality for a young black couple. After moving into the home built in the 1960s, the Austins staged major renovations, adding an entire floor and more than 1,000 square feet of space, along with a deck, new floors, a fireplace, and new appliances. Then they got it appraised.
I read the appraisal. I looked at the number and I was like, this is unbelievable.
The family tells me the appraiser was an older white woman and they're convinced race was a factor. The home appraised for $989,000, just $100,000 more than the Austins got it appraised for before they started the work, despite $400,000 in renovations.
It was like, you know, it was a slap in the face.
The Austins immediately called their lender and pushed back. After a month of escalating their complaints, they were approved for a second appraisal. When the date came, they got creative.
We had a conversation with one of our white friends, and she was like, no problem, I'll be Tanisha. I'll bring over some pictures of my family. She made our home look like it belonged to her.
And it worked.
So it appraised for 1.482.
Yeah.
Which was 50% more than what it appraised for by a couple weeks prior.
Almost 1.5, $500,000 more.
The Austins were outraged and believe this is another ugly result of larger systemic issues.
There are implications of the ability to create generational wealth or pass things on if our house is appraised for 50% less than what is valued at.
We know discrimination is in nearly every aspect of the home buying process, and really we need to be addressing it as an industry.
Discrimination in the housing market comes in many forms and has a long history in our country and in the Bay Area, leading to alarmingly low rates of Black Americans owning their own home. Black home ownership lags across the country, with less than half, only 44% of Black Americans owning their own home in 2020. Compare that to 74% for white Americans. Looking at the Golden State, just 34% of Black Californians own a home. In the Bay Area, those numbers are even lower. Just 33% of Black San Francisco residents own a home, compared to 61% of white San Franciscans. The numbers are more drastic in San Jose, with a Black home ownership rate of 31% and a white home ownership rate of 65%, more than double.
Why are we seeing such a great disparity?
There's still problems in the housing industry of Black people being steered away from white neighborhoods, even though that is technically illegal, or Black people not having the same access to mortgages that white people have.
According to the National Association of Realtors, Black applicants are rejected for mortgage loans at rates 3 times higher than that of white applicants. Another factor suppressing Black home ownership.
African Americans have nearly double the amount of student loan debt than we see for white homebuyers. So that's just one of the many hurdles that African American homebuyers are really strapped with and holds back their buying power.
And the pandemic has made things worse. The representative from NAR stressed closing the homeownership gap is essential to closing the wealth gap in our country. To make that happen, equity in housing and access to affordable homes must be the central focus. The Austins agree.
If we are aware that implicit bias exists in other systems, police, school, why wouldn't they also exist in the housing market? And then what can we do to, fix that?
There could be help on the way in the form of 2 Biden administration proposals. The first would extend $15,000 in down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. The other, a $100 billion fund to update existing and create new affordable housing. Covering race, culture, and social justice, Julian Glover, ABC 7 News.
What you witness is an awesome statistic in 2021. And our guests will help us understand what's going on. So she'll have an opportunity to begin by giving her view of what just took place and how all of these things come together in the marketplace. So Ms. English, if you would, you may begin.
Thank you, Dr. Joe. First off, I would like to thank you Dr. Honeycutt and the Honeycutt Foundation for the honor to speak today. I really appreciate it. This is one of the things I'm very passionate about, which is getting more of us and just more people overall, but definitely us into home ownership. In the video you just viewed, low appraisal is not just happening in the Bay Area, but it's happening all over the country. And it's been happening for years. And it's been also in the form of redlining. And for us to stop that from happening or continuing to happen, we need to do just like what that couple did and fight it. You know, dispute it, fight it, and get creative in order to make sure that we can sell our homes get our homes value at the correct appraised value, so that we can, decrease that wealth gap that we have between Black people, African Americans, and white people.
So, with that in mind, what do you think we need to do to help get more African Americans into homes?
Well, one thing is education. You know, we need to really start, more of us, more Black Americans need to really start, going to financial literacy classes, which is free. I mean, a lot of these are financial literacy classes, going to the websites like the Consumer Finance website. They have all the education you pretty much need to understand what is needed to buy a home. And one of the things too is getting our credit in order too, cutting down our debt, which I know is hard, but cutting down our debt, understanding how, credit works, having second jobs or side gigs also, so we can increase, pay down our debt, increase our savings, so we can increase our credit scores, because we have to have a strong financial record in order to get the best rates and the best rates and the best loan products, so that you can buy a home and be able to afford it and be able to keep it.
Well, we hear a lot today about systemic racism, and many of our politicians seem to think systemic racism does not exist. So what's your take on this notion in relationship to the real estate industry?
Well, have you heard of the color of law and other books that Dr. Honeycutt has a list of books to read? Real estate played a major part in the continuation and the start of systemic racism. I mean, the real estate industry, because I'm part of it, so I'm putting we in there for that purposes. But the real estate industry, we had people staying, we had it where Black people's homes and neighborhoods were redlined, where they were, not appraised right at the right valuation at low prices, where they had paid the highest mortgage interest rate versus the white counterparts, where we had it where Black people couldn't move into certain neighborhoods. They were steered from different neighborhoods, where the homes that are located in has low, either the schools are not are bad, are not as good, as I say, as there are in white neighborhoods. And real estate industry played that part in that, through the mortgages and how we steered, Black people, and how we kept them out of different neighborhoods.
Now, you raise another interesting point in terms of this question of city governments, some of the policies that they make relative to gentrification. In the old days, they used to talk about urban renewal, and we used to say this meant Negro removal, as opposed to improving the community. So how gentrification relate to this process of market values in the community?
Like lately or right now with gentrification, it's not affecting, actually it does, the positive part of gentrification is that it is raising the value of, Black neighborhoods or people of color neighborhoods. It is raising the value of their homes. So now they are able to refinance their home. If they stay in their home, they're able to refinance their home for a lower interest rate. They're able to pull more equity out of their home to fix their home or even pay for their kids to go to college. So gentrification in the positive way is helping those communities. Now, the negative part of it is for renters. It is affecting, renters are being displaced because they can't compete with those who are coming in and able to pay higher rents. So that's a negative part of gentrification. But so far for home ownership, it's positive, increased land value. It allows, people of color now to have their property, properly evaluated. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have homes that in neighborhoods that was only worth $300,000, and that was just 5 years ago. And now in that same community, that home is worth $900,000 in that same community. And that's because of gentrification.
Well, then let me back up a little bit and ask you a question relative to appraisals and how those appraisals work, the technique of steering folks away from property that may, in the long term, increase in value, how you deal with rejected offers when you have made an offer, and selling homes, investment opportunities. So, in the mix of that, I'm just interested in what do we do about that?
Like, for instance, what we saw in that video regarding addressing appraisals, for instance, right? One thing we need to do to prepare, like just like unfortunately what that couple had to do, if you want to get the highest appraised value for your home and you're a person of color, you need to put away all the photos and black art or any cultural arts that they can tell who you are. Not be there when the appraiser shows up. Especially if you're going for one thing you can do if you're going for a refinance, for instance, just like that couple, is you can ask one of the realtors who's always sending you postcards in your neighborhood, right, to give you a free valuation and email you all the important documentation of the comparable properties so that you're able to use that to dispute the lower appraisal. If you get appraisal that's low for some reason or another, you use that to help you dispute. Also, have a realtor be the person who give access to the property, and they can hear and ask questions to the appraiser. What are they using in order to calculate the value of the home, and they'll also be able to give them, up-to-date comps, because appraisers, they look at what's on the MLS and they look at the pictures, but they may not know the background of why a particular home, was priced a certain way. Whereas the local realtor would know that. They would know, oh, no, that was priced 100 grand too less because it was a fixer, even though the pictures may not reflect that, but they would know. But the realtor being local knows, hey, that's a fixer. That's why that was praised 100,000 less. So you should use that as part of the comps in praising this particular home. And also, if someone feels like they have proof or feels like they've been discriminated against, they can file a complaint at the Bureau of Real Estate Appraiser, which is a division of the Department of the Consumer Affairs. And we will have, actually I could put the link in the chat box right now, and where people can file a complaint.
It's amazing as we discuss this particular issue, back in the day, so to speak, to get an apartment, you send your white friend in to get the apartment. Otherwise, you'd be rejected from getting an apartment. I remember those were things that the NAACP used to use as strategies. And I see this enduring aspect of racism have continued into 2021, where we have to devise strategies in order to deal with the system.
But we have to keep doing that unless we start, as Dr. Hunnicutt said, call to action. If you see it, start reporting it. Because if we start seeing, like what happened to that white appraiser they were talking about, if they report it and put it on her record and they can start seeing that she has a pattern, we can get these licenses revoked. We can stop having real estate professionals continue to be licensed to discriminate. But we got to report them. We can't just say, we can do all these strategies just to make sure it works, but we need to report these people.
Okay. In terms of an individual where you have to look at your credit profile, you run into this question of the FICO scores and the credit scores, where this device seemed to, quote, separate the good risk from the bad risk. How do you think that affect African Americans?
Well, first off, because of, we weren't able, our ancestors, going back to, the past here, I think it affects us because our ancestors wasn't able to take advantage of FHA, and the white counterparts were able to. So they're able to buy into the better neighborhoods and appreciable properties that was able to appreciate. So they were able to buy, able to then pay for their kids' college education, which we're not able to do so as much. So we have more debt. And because we have the college debt, then that also hurts us if we try to go for credit cards. We have the higher interest credit cards, which makes it harder to pay off. So that affects your credit report. We don't have the same advantages because we weren't able to take advantage of what I call the first affirmative action back in, when FHA first started, because 98% of people who was able to participate in the FHA program back in that day was only white people, not us. And so they were able to invest and be able to pay for their kids' college education. they're able to give their kids better schools and education and access to credit, which we don't have. So we end up having higher interest rate credit cards, student loans and etc.
So this seems like a cycle that deals with this immense notion of debt and how debt is used and how debt is perceived by the lenders. We were talking earlier about this idea you mentioned that you had to not pay your credit cards off. Maybe explain that to people who need to understand that, because it has an impact.
Okay, so what goes into the FICO score, the factors that's considered in the credit scoring includes repayment history. That represents 35% of your credit score is how good you are repaying your payments. And then the length of credit, the history you have of credit, that represents 15% of your credit scores. Your total debt represents 30%, and credit utilization represents 30%. And that's really a big part, actually, because let's say, what the credit bureau want to see is that you're only using 35% of your total credit. And the way you can do that is, one, you can request a higher credit limit. That will help, lower your utilization right away. Secondly, because you want to have a strong repayment history, I tell people, use your credit cards for everything. Have your cell phone bill, have your utilities. If you're able to get your rent on there, have your rent paid, but pay everything using your credit card, especially the ones that give you points, But then what you want to do and look at the timing of it is, because most of these credit cards in the beginning would be high interest rate until you prove yourself and they can call them up and ask for a lower interest rate. You want to pay that off, but it's all about the timing of it. So when your credit card issuers report to the credit bureaus, then you want to keep that 35% of utilization on there, but you can pay it off and avoid paying the finance charges.
Well, I'm glad you're explaining it, because I come from the old school where the folks would pay off all your debt. This goes against that whole notion of paying off all your debt. So sort of like a catch-22, it seems, to folks who don't know that.
Well, you are paying off your debt. That you can pay off those credit cards every single month. You just want to make sure that 35% of it still shows up in that credit report per month. So, and you keep using 35% every single month, that helps your score. Because also you have to remember too is that, the stronger your FICO score is, the better interest rate you get on a mortgage. The better it also dictates how much down payment you have to put down. I mean, you have a credit score of over 740, you can pretty much for instance, get a 0% financing for a car. And for a mortgage, that could be a jumbo, because your scores are closer to 800. They can a jumbo loan is anything over 750. A jumbo loan where they require you normally put 20% down, because you have such good credit scores, they can say you come in at 5 or 10% and still don't have to pay PMI, private mortgage insurance. But if your scores is in the 580s range and things like that, you pretty much only could qualify for an FHA loan. And FHAs are more expensive. There are higher loan fees. You have to pay PMI, and you're a limit to what you can pay. What you can purchase. Like in LA County, for instance, the purchase price is around $822,000. It's a limit that's placed on you. So you could be making great money and you can afford, let's say, $1 million home, but because of your credit's bad, you're limited to, the FHA limits.
So Ms. English, what I hear you saying, you're going to make me a better manager of my credit. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, and people have to realize too, not to be scared of debt. There's good debt and there's bad debt. But when you use debt and we're talking about good, but actually too, let's talk about the type of credit cards. For instance, department store credit cards can hurt you more so than a regular, Chase or, Visa or MasterCard. Mm-hmm. Okay, department store cards hurt you more. So what you definitely want to have is department card debt. If you have it, pay it off, because that can hurt you. The things that really helps you with your credit, that help your credit scores, of course, is a mortgage payment, then an auto loan, installment loans, and then Visa, MasterCards, then department stores. Okay. In the order of hierarchy of what helps your credit. Okay. And so if you're going to do a department store like me, I love Macy's. And I like to I like to use department store cards because I like to use the points in order to get freebies and discounts and things like that, but then I pay it off. Mm-hmm. And then you get cards that give you air miles in hotels. So you know, by using that to pay your utility bills, your cell phones, things like that, it's pretty much like getting free money if you're not paying the interest rate, right? So that you can use it to stay at. I can't tell the last time I paid for a hotel. I use my points to pay for my hotels. I just use points to fly business class Arizona.
You're
So
amazing. Let me ask you.
it's a way to use credit. That's a smart way to use credit to make it work for you.
Well, thank you for that one. Now I'm going to ask you, are there African American mortgage companies, banks, financial institutions, credit unions that are African American friendly?
I like that, African American friendly. Well, in California, I do know a Broadway Federal Bank, which is now called City First Bank, but they do not offer mortgages for single family homes. They only do multifamily 5 units or above and commercial loans. But we do have one of our resources that has list 38 African American banks and credit unions, which we have a link for. There's like 38 of them, and I found that on the watchtheyard.com. So we have that as one of our resources to give to people. But to answer your question more, oh, sorry, I'm not getting even. I'm sorry, go ahead.
You can continue.
Okay. Well, speaking of friendly, the Consumer Financial Bureau, they track banks that are more supportive of minorities. Right now, they don't have it. I did call. Right now, they don't break it down by race or ethnicity, but they do break down who are more supportive of lending, mortgage lending. And it turns out Quicken Loans is the top, the top 25 that they listed. Quicken Loans is the top one that are, per the 2019 report from the Consumer Finance Bureau, they rate number 1 out of 25 as the highest lending to minority borrowers. But that also includes white women too, by the way. And, you know, and so also too, and it, you know, when we are looking to get approved or, you know, and want to avoid the racism issue, you can go to digital banks like Quicken, because per an NPER study, they use they're algorithm-based lenders, and they result in better approval for Black and Latinx buyers. And Better.com numbers also support these findings as well. This company saw a 411% increase in Black borrowers. So also, to go back to answer your question, how you can get more Black people as homeowners, they need to also reach out to Quicken Loans and other digital bankers so that they can fit into the algorithm versus based on their color of their skin when they walk into a bank or talk to a lender over the phone.
That's interesting that you mentioned Quicken Loans. A lot of these folks do a lot of robocalls lately, seeking clients. But let me ask you, in terms of African American,
they're good and they're quick. They can close in under 30 days.
They can.
Yes, they can.
You're helping me out with that. Now, is there a ranking of these? Over the years, I've seen statistics on organizations like Bank of America showing evidence that they tend to have poor business practice when it comes to giving loans to African Americans, and they get sued time and time again. Wells Fargo, all of these, they were once classified as predators. Have that changed any for these companies after the big upheaval?
Oh yeah, they got in trouble after the short sale downfall. They've definitely got in trouble. There is a bureau. It's the credit. Wait a second, I know it by heart now, and now I'm losing. I need more coffee. It's the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and they're the ones that they have the regulations in place that ranks mortgage companies like what we talked about. They're also the ones who regulate the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act, which requires financial institutions to maintain, report, and publicly disclose loan level information about mortgages. So this data that they track helps show whether lenders are serving the housing needs of their communities. They give public officials information that helps them make decisions and policies, and they shed a light on lending patterns that could be discriminatory. And for instance, they recently examined and investigated an institution for compliance with the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act, Equal Opportunity Act, and they filed a lawsuit against Townstone Financial Inc., which is a non-bank retail mortgage creditor that alleged, among other things, that they illegally discouraged people, prospective African-American applicants and prospective applicants living in African-American neighborhoods in Chicago from applying for mortgage loans, and they got sued. So we do have this bureau in place to help us. And I said that same website is also where you can go to file a complaint if you feel like you've been discriminated against.
Okay. Here recently, we had a proposition passed. It's called Proposition 19. Could you, I know I'm not going to ask you to go through the whole thing, but can you give the final points as to what that represents in terms of the consumer?
Well, I actually served on the taxation committee at California's Association of Realtors, and I was on that committee that was pushing that Prop 19, and we had to compromise. And the big compromise that a lot of people are mad about is what's happening with the heirs, and the point that they no longer can pass on the same property tax basis that their parents have unless they live in the house, and then there's exclusion and all that good stuff. But my perspective on that, because I hear people thinking that Prop 19 prevents the Black community from creating generational wealth. But if you look at it this way, my perspective on that is, let's say you have your parents' home, you have their house, not little, it could be big or what have you, right? But it's just one house. You normally have more than one heir that's going to inherit. You may have 2, 3, or 4 heirs that can inherit that property. So if you were to keep it as a rental, which is what a lot of the people are mad about Prop 19, they can't keep it as a rental, you have to split. Let's say that property's earning $3,000 or $4,000 a month in rent. Then you have to subtract out, maintenance and property taxes, insurance, any other expenses related to that. And you have to split it among those heirs. Now, keep this also in mind too. The longer you keep that property, the more you're going to end up paying capital gains because the property will appreciate over years. Okay, so if you were able to sell the property as close to the death of your parent, you could pay little to no capital gains tax. And in that same scenario, now you're able to take those proceeds and split it among all your siblings, all the heirs. So now they can put a down payment on a property or pay debt off. Whereas if they kept it as a rental, they wouldn't be able to do that. Or another thing is if you have one of the siblings that move into the property, right, which then allows them to maintain their parents' tax basis, that can be unfair to the other siblings later on, especially if that sibling is unable to, buy them out. And so that sibling's living in there, the longer they live in there and they finally sell it, now all the siblings will have to pay capital gains tax on that appreciable asset. So that's another way to look at it. I mean, people are looking as, okay, you're paying, now because they have to pay more, and now they have to, the property tax is going to increase from their parents only paying $600 a month, $600 a year, and then they can increase to $4,000 or $5,000 and making it more, not feasible to keep it as a rental property. And they see that can prevent us, from the Black community, from creating generational wealth. But then you look at it as sell it. Sell it and split and use that money to invest in other places where your money can stretch the furthest. I mean, I have one client, we sold their one house, right? And now we sold their one house, and now they were able to invest in 4 different properties in 4 different states. So now their investments is diversified instead of being held up in just one rental. Especially we see that in COVID now. What happened in COVID, where you have that one rental property and your tenants are not paying rent. Now, if they were able to diversify that into more properties, they wouldn't properties and people, they could have lessened the risk of people not paying.
Now, do you see this as a national trend? I know California tend to do things different than those folks on the East Coast, and I do have folks from the East Coast looking at this program. Do you see this as being a national trend where this particular elements that speak to the elderly in this particular proposition? So I'm just curious in terms of, is it a trend you think in the industry that's going to have national implications as well?
California and New York, but California in particular, we tend to be the trend makers. But this particular Prop 19, I don't see it being affecting states that have lower, property values. I don't see it affecting that, or states that don't appreciate as well as we do. So I don't see it, those states adopting this. But also the big thing about Prop 19 is that, and while we pushed for it, that was the main purpose of it, was that we wanted to free up, we want to help seniors and elderly who are living in homes that they, is too big for them and may have deferred maintenance, would now allow them to downsize and move their tax bases to another home. So that was one of the purpose of the Prop 19, also for people who are disabled and also for those who suffered disasters. So that was one of the main purpose of it. And believe me, we really wanted to keep the heirs, and their inheritance. But then one of the things that really brought this up was that, I don't know if you heard the case or not, but, one actor, he, was making quite a bit of money per month on rent, and still paying a very low tax basis. So that was that loophole that he took advantage of, really brought to light. And while the labor unions that fought against, Prop 19, they only came aboard when we said, okay, this will be the compromise, that the heir has to move into the property, can no longer be a rental property in order to keep that tax basis.
Okay. We've covered a lot of territory, but one of the things I'm very interested in, because you represent a very unique group of folks who are in this industry and have the level of expertise that you're demonstrating. I'm very interested in how did you come by. First of all, I do want everybody to know that that this is a former servicewoman who has a distinguished service career as well. She's been in the military, and I want to thank her for her service, because I know what that takes. And so I want to hear a little bit about how you got into this career field and what prompted you to be so interested in dealing with the African American community, specifically in finances. Would you speak to that?
Well, first, I want to thank you for your service, since you were Air Force, right?
Yes.
And say, I'm Navy, sailor. Lovers, not fighters. Lovers, not fighters.
Well,
Navy,
you could swim better than I could.
Well, I can float. They taught us how to float. They taught us how to pull off those pans and make them to flotation. So that's why our pans are like the way they are, so we can make them to flotation devices.
All right.
But I got into real estate because I used to run a CPA firm, and what we always told our clients is real estate, and also real estate is a foundation of wealth. And so we always advise our clients to purchase real estate for their homes, and then purchase real estate to fund their pension plan. And then you use it to fund your pension plan. You buy an office space to house your business. You buy real estate when your children goes away for college. You buy them real estate so they have appreciable asset by the time they graduate from college, instead of wasting money at paying dorms that you can't deduct. So I was introduced to real estate, while working in that CPA firm, and I got into real estate. The transition for me, since I still was, running my business management company, was being a loan officer, because that was an easy transition, being an accountant and everything. And so I was really heavily involved with the mortgages, and then and helping. And the way I approached real estate was I approached it from the budget side of things. I never wanted people to overpay for a home and be stressed out. So I approach it as, there's good debt and there's bad debt. And what I actually do, by the way, is I tell people to buy investment properties before buying their own principal resident. So buy enough investment property so that investment property could then pay your principal resident. Because I believe actually that, good debt is debt that allows you to put money in your pocket, right? A principal resident is not really good debt. It takes money out of your pocket. Only time is really a good debt, in my opinion, and also rich dad, poor dad is one of the things too about this, is if you buy it at a really low discount and it already comes in with equity when you're buying it, or you're able to turn the equity in that property into, take the equity out of that property and invest in a money-making, business, something that's going to bring income to you, like a business, like investing in other real estate or stocks and bonds. So that's why I think about the, so far principal residents, and I like educating people on that, on, using credit, using debt, investing in real estate property. And you know, I've been in ministry for years because both sides of my grandparents are, my granddads were pastors. And so I was, you know, I was usually put into being in financial ministry. And so, and of course, the churches I go to are Black. And so, well, I shouldn't say, of course, I shouldn't say that, shouldn't take it for granted. But that's what I was raised in. And I just want more of us to be financially secured. And pretty much the only way you can be financially secured is one, life insurance too. That's another way we can pass on inheritance to our kids is through life insurance, but real estate. Meaning that in every culture, England, you know, going back everywhere, you know, the history of wealth comes from real estate. I mean, that's what when you're gonna go, if you're talking about access to credit lines, access to better credit and everything, when you own property, that gets you the better interest rates. That gets you the better, you know, credit lines that can help you fund your business, grow your business, expand it. And they use real estate as collateral for that. I mean, you want to go for SBA loans before COVID, that is. The SBA loans has the best, you know, interest rates and best down payment, you know, less down payment you require, right? But what do SBA want to see? Real estate. They want to use that as collateral in order for you to get that SBA loan.
Let me ask you this, because you represent one of the top persons in your field. And I'm very interested in what traits that you need in order to be on the top of the game the way you are.
Well, I'm not at the top yet. I'm in progress. So let's
Well,
say
in that field,
I'm progressing. I'm progressing. That's for sure. But I think for me personally, you have to be passionate. You know, I'm personally passionate about helping people create financial security through real estate, using that as a foundation. But you have people who are top of the field and they just use it as an assembly line, you know, just sell homes and get it. I mean, and a lot of them are able to get real estate business just because of what they look like and their family and their spheres and things like that. But I think the ones who are like myself, who really are passionate about property owner rights, you know, or advocacies, you know, like there's a couple of bills coming up right now that like for the Biden administration, for instance, that can hurt us for getting, you know, creating wealth. I mean, Biden, he has 3 bills that's going to attack capital gains, for instance. And we have it in our link and our resources where people need to contact their representatives. Because right now, you know, he has this proposal, he has a few capital gain proposals. He has one that's coming up where he's going to charge capital gains tax at death.
Wow.
Okay. And right now, as you know, how we avoid capital gains when someone passes away and we're their heirs, especially when we're their kids, we have what's called step up in basis, where, you know, you're able to claim the new basis of that property is the same base of what the value was when your parent passed away. And so by using that basis, and it's time to sell the property, especially if you sell it close to their death, you can pay little to no capital gains. But if that wasn't in place, your basis would be what your parent bought that house 30 or 40 years ago, plus any improvements, and then you have to pay capital gains after the exclusion they give you, right? Well, not him, but his administration now he's proposing that, you know, you have to pay capital gain tax on any gain over $1 million. And here in California, where your properties are, so you can, you know, a shack could sell for $1.5 million, you know, or $2 million. That affects us here in California, New York, Connecticut, and other high-end states. That affects us. And so we need to contact our, you know, our homeowners, and especially Black people. If you want to keep that legacy for your family, you need to really look at this legislative bills that's coming out that affects you. I mean, he has another proposal which I think is unfair, especially to seniors. You know, what he's coming out with right now is that if you make $1 million, right, you will be taxed at 40%. 40%. Right? And that's just federal. We're not even talking about state. Okay. And so if you have seniors who finally sell their home, right? And so it's easy for them for that particular year to earn over $1 million. So they're gonna actually be penalized because they may want to downsize, move closer to their children, or, want to have a, downsize so they can be able to fund their future long-term needs and have a comfortable retirement. Well, they can if they ain't paying $800 million, in capital gains tax, which they wouldn't have to do if it was taxed at the regular 20%. So he's doing that. That's another proposal. And then he's going after 1031 exchanges.
Okay.
And 40% of exchanges are done here in California. And so do you know what 1031s are? Is that it allows you to defer your capital gains when you sell your rental property or income producing property and you buy another property at the same price or higher, you're able to defer your capital gains tax. And that's one of the number one estate planning tools we use so we can leave a legacy for our kids. Because then we deferred in capital gains. It allows us to, for instance, this is one of the most popular thing that made people investors now. They would buy their first condo or first small house, starter home, right? And then they make a little bit more money, or they get married and they need a bigger space. They would keep that first home and they would turn it into a rental. And then when that rental has earned enough or has appreciated enough, then they would trade it up and buy a multi-family, unit, apartment unit, or a commercial, and they would keep trading up. And then when they pass away, now they can leave it to their children without having to pay capital gains. And now their kids have monies available to invest, to, pay off debt and to have down payments on their own homes. And those are the three taxes that he's putting under the American Family Plan. And so we do have in our resources, we have a link where you can discover who your senator is, who your representative is, and contact them. And I had a conversation with Congresswoman a couple of days ago as a state director. I presented scenarios for Congresswoman Karen Bass and about this. And we also are, as state directors, we also talked to Congresswoman Waters about this. And, this session today is all about call of action. And for all of us to protect homeownership, to get more of us in homeownership, to be able to leave legacy to our kids, we have to take action and call our representative, because they're supposed to be working for us and supposed to be taking care of our, needs and concerns. And this is a big one.
Ms. English, you are awesome. You have covered a lot of territory, and now we're going to open up for questions. This is where we are, Thor?
Yes, sir.
Once you get unmuted there, I can see what makes you the top of your game. You really have a lot of passion for what you do, and it's very much appreciated with our audience. And certainly, you've got a lot more that you just can't give it all tonight.
That's right. That's right.
So Thor, let's move to the next part.
Excellent, excellent. And Dr. Kenton, I want to thank you. Your questions are so good and get really to the heart of this topic. And Taunee, just amazing. You're a wealth of information, and you speak to a lot of people. Let me just say this: you speak to a lot of people, and they're very knowledgeable. But when you get down to the technical details, sometimes they don't have it. Maybe they heard it secondhand. This lady, Miss English, she is at the heart of it. And she is at the legislative part of it. She's in with the people. She's talking to people, getting real facts. And we're bringing it here to you tonight, thanks to Dr. Veronica Honeycutt. So I want to thank her for that. Mary, do we have anything in the chat in terms of questions or comments?
Yes, we have several in the chat and by email as well.
Oh, great. Excellent. All right, well, go on ahead. Let's see what we got.
Okay, Ms. Taunee, this is from Dr. Honeycutt. Could you tell us about the loss of personal rights since Prop 19 supersedes the rights of individuals who have a trust? Is this the beginning of other restrictive actions which help the state get more taxes from people while their personal rights are attacked?
Yes, and that's what we just talked about. I was just explaining earlier. Yes, it is the beginning of it, because real estate is like the easy thing to attack. I mean, that's where you can get the most funds and the most funding to pay for all the different things that they want to do in their budget. So yes, it is the Prop 19. Well, that's California, but on the national level, we have these upcoming bills that I was just talking about that is going to, take away some of the, it's going to take away the estate planning that we use in order to pass, legacies onto our kids with those capital gains propositions they have.
Great. This is also from Dr. Honeycutt. What is the best use of reparation funding for African Americans in terms of housing? And what is the best way to spend this money in terms of securing housing and property for African Americans?
Well, I've been talking about this for a long time. And to me, I think the best way for reparation, I know they just recently passed HR 40 that's supposed to be doing a study about reparation. But for me, I think they need to create a silent second, forgivable silent second program similar to the Good Neighbor program, because that equals 20%. Okay, because, we unfortunately weren't able to save or have our parents, be able to give us the 20% or more down payment on these homes, which is hard for us to compete in this market. Yeah, you have these 15,000, 25,000 grants, but that's just to pay your closing costs. That doesn't help you with your down payment. And we saw in the crisis we just had when they gave us 100% financing, right? And we can't afford that bill at 100%, but we had that 20% down payment, we would still have homes and not got affected when the short sale crisis happened. So I think reparation wise, they should provide a 20% silent second. And that would make up for the point that we would have had that 20% down payment if our ancestor was able to participate when FHA first came out. And they were also able to buy in those neighborhoods instead of being stuck in neighborhoods that was redlined. But they were able to buy neighborhoods that appreciated. Then they were been able to provide to their heirs, the 20% down payment. So to me, that's the way. To me, that's the reparation right there.
Taunee, another point in that question is, at the end of World War II, they had a housing program that brought white Americans into the middle class.
Right.
At the same time, Black Americans who served in the military was in fact denied the opportunity to get VA loans.
That was the FHA. That was the first. That's when they started the FHA program.
Yes. So you're right on with that in terms of reparation, because you've got a time when the nation was in a position to do the very thing that you're talking about to a lot of people, and it failed.
Yeah, we wouldn't have this wealth gap if we were able to participate in that FHA back when they first started. And we were able to move into the neighborhoods instead of being stuck in lower neighborhoods where they're redlined and didn't appreciate as fast or high as the other neighborhoods. We wouldn't be in this situation if we were able to do that. So to make it right, give us that 20%.
I agree. Taunee, what do you know about lower appraisals for African American sellers versus white sellers?
Well, as you saw in the video, it is happening. I mean, that was a tragedy, that $500,000 difference. But we hear about this in this industry quite a bit. I mean, I recently, with one of my listings, for instance, not just the low appraisals, but also your offers you get too. You have to be very strategic in how you sell a property, and that's the same thing with appraisals. You have to take the personal photos, down. And anything that, seems, Afrocentric and et cetera, in order to get higher offers and higher appraisals. I mean, the strategies, like they said, having a white friend or having a realtor be the one that's there to greet the appraiser is what you need, because it's still happening. I mean, these lower appraisals are still happening all around. I mean, I personally dispute, appraisals on, when I see, because I bring in the data and I know, and I help the appraisers, by the way. I don't even wait for them to send the appraisal. Okay, I send them supporting data, and I explain to them, this is why, you can't use a particular comp because of this and this and that. And so, when people are looking at hiring realtors or looking at, just hiring realtors off the bat, they need to make sure that they have a realtor that's going to go the extra mile to make sure that they sell their house at the highest possible price. And then when you're refinancing, use a realtor. Ask them to give you a free valuation. All those realtors that send you postcards, they will give you a free valuation, and they will give you the supporting document so that you can dispute a low appraisal if it comes to that.
And that question, by the way, was by Sherry Sawyer. I do have some email questions. Let me pull the first one up. What do you see as some solutions to end discrimination in housing?
Last year, the National Association of Realtors and the California Association of Realtors, we started doing implicit bias training for our realtors. I actually led the panel. I was a moderator for the panel for implicit bias training, or the implicit bias panel last year. So we also, as realtors in the industry, we try to, help people identify if they have implicit bias, and, how to identify it and how to, stop having it. So we're doing that on an industry level. The second thing we did in the state of California is we're now including this fair housing and discriminatory form in every purchase offer. And in this 2-page form, it tells you how to recognize if you've been discriminated or not, and who's the protected classes. And it has all the lists of all the resources that you can contact to file a complaint if you feel you are. But now that's part of our purchase contract now. So we are doing more education on that. I personally, I'm pushing this again, is that I think we need to revoke people's licenses. In New York, I don't know if you guys know about the Long Island incident. They did some testing. Newsday did testing in 2019, and they caught, realtors on video discriminating against, Black people, Hispanic, and Asian. They caught them on video. And so New York last year have a law now that will revoke the license of any realtor, found discriminating. And I think we need that here in California. You could train people all they want, but if you threaten their money and their livelihood, then they will start seeing that the only race they should be looking at, only color they should be looking at is green.
I have a threefold question. The first part, in the 70s, redlining was abandoned and federal policy focused on getting African Americans into homes. On the surface, that seemed like a great idea. What went wrong?
Well, the homes that we were getting approved for at high interest rate were in red line areas. And so we were, getting into homes, we're in homes in neighborhoods that didn't appreciate, so that they had to stay in that neighborhood. They couldn't move out of the neighborhood. They weren't able to, they weren't able to pay for their kids to have a better college education because they didn't have the equity in their homes. I thank God for that program though, because it did help, did help us to get into homes, but it would have been better if we were not put into neighborhoods that was redline, that we weren't issued credit mortgage. Our ancestors are on us for right now. We'll be in better shape if they weren't in neighborhoods as redline. They weren't having mortgage interest rates that was so high that they weren't able to save and able to invest in their kids' education and their future.
And do you think this was by design? In other words, did anyone actually intend to solve the housing problem? Or did the policy achieve its real goal, namely reinforcing inequality?
I think it's we have the term, intention, intent and what actually happens. I think the intent was to make us, homeowners and things like that, but they did it with limitations. They did it with segregation pretty much. Redlining is just another form of segregation. So yeah, you have the services, but you don't have the same services. So does it help? It helped the ways where some of us were, our families were able to take that money and be able to buy real estate and be able to keep, hold on to that real estate and be able to, move up and work and learn how to work the system to get out of that situation too. That some were able to get out of that situation.
As you were talking,
my parents were one of them. I mean, they bought in the 70s in Watts, and then they did what they needed to do and moved into, white neighborhoods later on. And it was able to, have their properties appreciate better. So they took advantage of that system, but then they used strategies to, to move up.
The third part of that question is, how do you draw a straight line between this history and these policies on the one hand and the persistent wealth gap on the other?
Well, I would tell people read The Color of Law and also the other books by Black authors that Dr. Honeycutt has, because it has a lot of information that really shows, explains it, but it goes back to what Dr. Joe was talking about. It started back after the war, when we weren't unable to take advantage of FHA. 98%, white people were able to take advantage of it. So they was able to have the money, the loan product that allowed them to purchase homes. We were unable to. So they put us in the projects. They put us in, low income housing. And they said where we could not save money or get better interest rates so we can buy property. So you go right back to that particular time, even further than that. I mean, when we were released as slaves, we're the only race that started out with zero capital. Other races that come here, they don't, other races and ethnicities that come to America, they don't start out with zero capital. They freed us of slavery with zero.
Right. Are you optimistic? And I believe you answered this question, but I'll ask this. Are you optimistic that we can solve a problem with such deep roots? And if we can solve it, what would that look like?
Well, that's going to take some time, that's for sure. But I think that, I'm seeing more. I am optimistic. I am seeing more of us not just placed in, multicultural, positions that don't have any teeth, but we actually are being placed in more policies. I see that a lot. I mean, this is the year where you're seeing a lot of us are being placed in positions where we can affect policy, because that's policies is what keeps us under, where we can't get anywhere. So a lot of us now, because of education, because of being woke, we're now opening our mouths and we fight against stuff. We're not just accepting that, okay, like that couple, we're just not going to accept the point that you're valuing your house $500,000 or less. We're going to fight that. And because of technology now, we know where to go and the sources to go to. So I think I am, optimistic that it's going to change, and it's going to change, and this gap will decrease, but only if we don't let these bills get passed that affects us. They put it as, oh, we're going to, give more money for this and that. That doesn't really help us. They try to put a Band-Aid thinking 15,000 or 25,000 is going to do something. And it doesn't. That helps. That helps. Lower. States that properties you still buy for 200, 300,000. Not here. We do have some areas in California, of course, but not overall. So I think that the more of us that get educated and fight and report, you see something, do something. And really, you really, call, get on that phone, bug, write. Show up to your senators, to your congressmen, to your assembly members, because they're the ones that's supposed to represent our interests. And the only way they will make a move if they want to get voted in for another term is to make sure that they are taking care of our interests. And right now, that Biden administration, those three different, just that part, there's other good stuff there, but that capital gains thing, that's going to hurt us. But he's using that because his administration is using that because real estate's easy game. I mean, you can have a property, as I said before, one property was worth 300-some thousand a few years ago. Now that same property is worth $1 million. It's because real estate is just an opinion of the day of what the value is, just like the stock market is. So real estate it's an easy place to try to get revenue, but we already paying taxes already. We already pay capital gains on that. And to go from, I mean, the case scenario I used with Congresswoman Bass, it was that, I had African-American widower who worked for the government for years. She sold her house in Culver City, for $3.5 million. And under the current law, her total tax was $800 and some thousand for federal and state. But if you do the capital gains, right, it's going to be $1.5 million, $1.5 million if they do this new law. And then let's say she stays in the house. And then she wants to leave it to her kids. If her kids are still single, they would have to pay capital gains, which they wouldn't have to pay originally, but under this current law, they would have to pay over like $800,000 in capital gains. And normally that would have been free money. That would have been all those years of working and they have this one asset that they want to leave to their kids. And now it's going to be less, $800,000 or less in that particular scenario. And what can $800,000 do for us? As Black people, where we could do $800,000, put a down payment, buy a house, pay off debt, pay our kids college education, that would be taken away from us.
Now, Taunee, you're so engaging. This conversation is so great. But Dr. Scott in the chat raised a question regarding immigrants who get resettlement costs when they come to America, who gets benefits coming to America, that the folks who was chained down didn't get that benefit. So she raised that question, and I also had I want you to talk about that devastating the predators. They return, you know, with the adjustable rate that goes adjustable in 6 months. You know,
Well, and
these
that's
folks
again,
are
that comes,
bad.
but that comes back to education again. Reason
Yeah,
why we would go for those type of loan products is because we have no choice because of our credit.
yeah.
So if you get that credit in line, you know, get that credit in line, start making phone calls to increase your credit limit, making phone calls. You do know creditors will reduce your credit card issuers will reduce your interest rate because I did it for all my clients as a business manager. You know, you have a good you have a good history with them. I've gotten, you know, annual fees waived. I've gotten interest rate down from 24% to 12% for my clients. So it's about, if they don't want to get into those type of loan products, don't do it. Get your finance, get your house in order, get your credit, get your finances in order. You also, what they look at your bank statements. You know, they always look at your last 3 months of bank statements. Make sure you start planning that. Before you go for a loan, start planning how your finances look. And like for our clients, for instance, who are self-employed, right? Some banks don't understand how to they don't understand how to read a Schedule C. And, you know, a lot of us do a lot of write-offs. So what I used to plan for my clients is that for, you know, 2 years, since we're going to go for a loan, we want the best interest rate, which tends to be for W-2 employees. I'm putting you on W-2. Then we get you that home, and then you can go back to, we put the rest back on Schedule C, or, you know, run through your S Corp or LLC. So you have to do a lot of planning, and that comes back to reach out to financial advisors, you know, and you email me, I will send you, you know, some recommendation of financial advisors that you can just do a consultation. You know, they can look at where you are and where you want to be and help you make the right decisions and give you those, you know, tools you need. So I think that's, you know, it's all comes back to education.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing what questions to ask, because you know, people don't realize they could get their interest rate lowered on their credit cards.
Mm-hmm.
Real quick, Mary, before you begin,
Yes.
as there's a lot of new information being said, it might have generated some new questions. So please, if you have some thoughts, put them in the chat. Mary's on top of it, and she's going to be reading off your comments and questions. Thank you, Mary. Go ahead.
Thank you, Thor. Taunee, have you heard of racially restrictive covenants? And if so, could you explain what those were, and are they still in existence?
Yes, they are. And the government right now, and the California Association of Realtors, for instance, we are, you know, helping to get rid of those. A lot of that, I mean, some, for instance, you had in communities where they specifically say a Japanese person can't live here in their HOA docs. You see that in HOAs, right? Where they say that a Japanese or a black person or Negro cannot live in this particular HOA or in this community. And so as an association and as a local association too, when we come across these covenants, because we see these covenants in HOA docs, right? We see it and we're reporting it, and we're, you know, getting, you know, really help get a lot of that, you know, deleted from those covenants. Oh yeah. I mean, I will not say the area, but my gosh, I couldn't believe that they literally said no Negroes can live here.
Mm-hmm.
And Negroes and Japanese, by the way, like the two that I came across.
Another question I have is, do you see any difference with veterans, African-American veterans, being discriminated against, or is it the same all across the board?
I think it's the same across the board, but if you're talking about so far as, I mean, veterans overall, you know, especially rental and things like that, they're again again discriminated because people may think they have PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about the rental, you know, market for veterans, you know, there is some discrimination that's happening there in the rental market. But so far as being discriminated about, I would think about the loan product, for instance. Right now in the market I'm in LA County, for instance, I mean, FHA and VA, you know, they're not as competitive as someone going for cash or going, you know, with a conventional loan. Because, you know, VA and FHA tend to have more conservative appraisals that come in. And they also have a get out of jail card, as I call it, where, you know, if the appraisal comes in low, even though they said they would pay over appraised value, they can still cancel escrow 28 days into the deal. So that part, so far as offers accepted in this particular market, you know, you have people discriminating about accepting their offers.
Mhm. And I have one last question. Do the banks discriminate against African Americans with loans for housing?
Oh, yeah. Yes, I mean, we just had an example of the borough, you know, investigating and finding the town stun people, for instance. You know, you heard Wells Fargo have gotten in trouble a few times. B of A got into trouble with it. So that Consumer Financial Bureau, Protection Bureau, they, you know, and if you file a complaint, but it only works if people file complaints. So their job is to, you know, file lawsuits, get settlements, or people who are mortgage companies are found discriminating against people. Oh yeah, definitely. Because don't forget, on that truth of lending thing they have you sign, you know, if you marking you're African American, they see that, and you have a name that can, you know, may seem that way. Yes. I mean, one thing we decided to do this year, I mean, last year, is that we told our clients, stop doing love letters with your offers, meaning that you would send a letter with a picture of yourself and your family saying, oh, my family would love to live your house, blah, blah, blah. We're telling people now, if you want to increase your chances of getting your offer accepted, don't put a photo or love letter. And we pretty much are stopping that overall, so we can't be accused of discrimination in that particular deal. Because that happens. You know, I've seen it, and I actually reported where I, you know, had working with a client, and we were cash offer, strong, clean, no contingency, and put offer for more money. And we found that, and though it's not just Black people this gets discriminated against, you also have religion. That particular neighborhood had a strong Jewish, was a Jewish neighborhood. And so they accepted an offer from a Jewish person that was less than ours. So it happens in those occasions too.
I have another question in regards to banks. How do we get banks to change their policies and make loans more equitable for Blacks and others? From Dr. Honeycutt.
Talk to your senators, talk to your council member. They're the ones that make the policies. They're the ones who regulate the banks. I mean, Maxine Waters is the chair of that committee. You know, so we tend to go to her a lot for things, but it's really getting into the ear, because they're the ones that regulate them. They're the ones that create the policies. They're the ones that help them get directors and et cetera, get hired at these companies. But again, you also have to you have to complain. You have to file those complaints and get them to investigate these things, like what happened with the Chicago one, when they investigated the Townstone for a mortgage loan. Someone, went and reported them, and then they investigated. And it showed that these people, this particular company was not, giving people the loans in African-American neighborhoods or African-American applicants. You have to file complaints. You have to talk. You have to write your congresswoman or man, assembly members, representatives. You have to write them. And that's what we do as a state. And that's one of the things I do as being a state director of California Association of Realtors.
Great. I have a question from Omar Aziz. Are you familiar with individual development accounts, IDAs, for home ownership and the Asset for Independence Act?
I'm not. I mean, what exactly is that about? And I probably know under a different name. Can you talk to more about that? And I can probably do under another name.
Okay. From Dr. Honeycutt as well. How does a person deal with predatory loans from a bank? Excuse me, particularly when the bank will not own up to its racist policies?
Again, that comes back to reporting to the consumer protection, because then they can research and investigate that. Also, you can go to the Fair Housing. There's this organization, which is actually a pretty good organization. Let me bring it up and also add the link to it too. Okay. And what they do is provide, they help you file your complaints with HUD, with the consumer protection. They do a full-on free counseling. They actually help you if you feel that the realtor or the person was discriminate against you, and it's a free counseling service. So I find that and put that in the link. But they're a really good organization, and they're, I think, what is it, fair housing. They're nonprofit for fair housing. So I have to find that. I just had it in front of me. But that's, I mean, that's pretty much, I mean, when you're dealing with loans, I mean, first off, I like to say, first off, try not to accept that loan product in the first place. Put yourself in the place where you do not. I mean, you have to, you know, if you're trying to buy a house, delay gratification, okay, until you get your house in order so you don't have to take, you know, be taken advantage of and, you know, go for that loan, because that's on you. Because it tells you right there what the interest rate is going to be. Read those documentation. Don't be just signing initial things. It's right there, because now, because of what happened with the short sale market, they now, you can't, they have it right in front of you, all the different fees and everything that they make you sign. So you need to really read what you're signing, you know, before, I mean, read before you sign. And you see something that is off, that's not what the mortgage person told you or what you didn't understand, don't sign that loan docs. Kick it back, and until you can get a better, kick it back. Don't sign it. Now, if, and so you really, as I say, go back to get your house in order first. That way you don't get, you don't have to, you know, you won't go for those mortgage products. So those, because once you know, are dealing with those high interest rate, you send yourself to fail, because sooner or later you're not going to be able to make those payments. Then you're just going to hurt your credit even more. I mean, foreclosures stay on your record for 10 years.
I have two last questions, and one is in regards to that question you just answered. If they do not understand the contracts, who can they go to help them understand those contracts?
Well, it's supposed to be their real estate agent and their loan broker. That's who they're supposed to go to, and that's who's supposed to be advising them, is those two people. But if not, before they even get into the home buying process, there's so many free home buying seminars that explains to you the entire process, how escrow works, how to read a contract, how to understand inspections or what to ask for. I mean, there's so many free education, and also on that same website, it breaks it down to you too. So people really need to read, take the time, get educated and read. Churches are constantly holding financial literacy classes. Nonprofits, realtors all around, because that's how they get buyers, they're holding free home buying seminars. So you know, you have to get educated. You have to get the knowledge. And we can't, because no longer can we sit there and say ignorance, you know, plead ignorance when we have the internet. You can just Google home buying process and you have all these websites that come up. You can Google what to look for in a home inspection. All this comes up. And then by doing that research homework beforehand, then you know if you have a good realtor or not. If that realtor is on your side, or if they're steering you, or they're, you know, just a bad realtor, and that helps you recognize that, and you can move on, not use that person. It also helps you know what questions to ask your mortgage broker, your lender. You know, and also, you know, start shopping. Because now you have these loan products where you can, it won't hurt your credit if you shop for them within the same time period. You can shop for multiple loans and see what they come back at. And same thing with credit cards. You know, we have one of those as resources, the best, you know, credit cards for 2021, and they have a comparison table, just like the same thing with the banks, the same with auto loans. Like bankrate.com is awesome for that, or bankrate.com. You can see all the different lenders and all the interest rates and all the little underwriting requirements they have to help you pick. So we really can't use excuse that we're ignorant when you got Google.
True. From Thor Koslowski, could you tell us about what the homeowner rights are during the foreclosures?
Okay, there are a couple of things. Okay, so to start off with, first off, you get what's called notice of default. And notice of default is they give you 9 days before they sell the property, and that's normal. Right now it's taking longer because of COVID, so they're not foreclosing as fast they would do. So would you have a right at this point? If you cannot, you know, bring the note up front, you can avoid foreclosure by, you know, giving them the deed in lieu is what they call, or you can short sell. Okay, back when the foreclosure was happening, they weren't allowing people to, you know, either, you know, try to get a loan modification. You know, you can do things, try to get a loan modification. You can go back to the bank and try to get a forbearance, you know, the loan modification, or you can, I tell people, short sale versus foreclosure, because that won't be on your record for 10 darn years. I mean, you can buy another property in a year if you do a short sale. Foreclosure, it makes it a little bit more difficult. So they give you those options: short sale, deed in lieu of foreclosure. If you can prove that you just had a hardship last year, but now you're back employed, you can get a forbearance. But you have to communicate, because a lot of times, I found people lose their homes because they refuse to pick up the phone when the mortgage company's calling them. They keep their head in the sand, thinking that it's going to go away. No, a sheriff will show up with a foreclosure note on your door when you could have just got on the phone and try to work it out. If you know that your financial situation was temporary, that's 6 months, a year, what have you, but now you're back on track, then you can ask to have, I always say, do it first. Don't do it at the end. Do it in the beginning. Let people know you have a hardship in the beginning, and they can work with you then. Because it's kind of hard to work with you after you have 6 or 8 months of silence, and now you have all this mortgage payments behind you. So just, if you have a hardship, get on the phone with your mortgage or your creditors and set her up in the beginning. But otherwise, your different foreclosure provision options is short sales, deed in lieu, or forbearance.
Great advice. I have one question from Thoriet. Ask, how can young people of color get into real estate and brokerage business?
Oh, to become a licensed realtor?
Yes.
The good thing is you can be licensed at 18 years old. You go to dre.gov and it has the different classes. I mean, it's real estate. Yeah, it lists the different classes there. You only have to be 18 years old. You can take an online course. They even have a boot camp that helps you pass the exam. So you get your exam, get fingerprints and everything. And, what you want to do is find the right brokerage that can give you the support you need and mentorship. So you want to interview the different brokerages, because usually, especially in the big ones, they don't tend to, some don't tend to give you the mentorship until you prove yourself that you had a couple sales under your belt before they start paying attention to you. So if you end up in one of those brokerages, most of the associations like ours, I mean, I'm over education too, at our association, we provide a lot of education for realtors, so if they're not getting it at the brokerage, they get it at our association. So I'm over that committee, professional development committee at our association. So, and our thing is, we really want to make sure that, and my tagline is, educated realtor. The more educated your realtor is, the better they can serve the communities.
And if someone is interested, are you able to assist them with that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Oh yeah. Just send me an email.
Okay. And I have one last comment.
Breaking down the best class to take and everything, and where to go and who to go under. I may even try to recruit you for myself, but I'm fair. I will tell you to show you other ones too, like Keller Williams and Coldwell Banker.
I do have one last one from Omar again. With this question that you are not able to answer, he did put a Google link in the chat for you to check out. And maybe offline, if you'd like, he can connect with you.
Yeah, so let's see.
The research.
Omar, yeah, email me.
And Omar, I am going to put her email in the chat.
I just did, so he can just email me there, because I know a lot of creative real estate that can be done. It probably just under a different name. Like individual development accounts and homeownership assets, independence. So I don't know if this is what it's about, Omar, but one of the things that, I do when I was running an accounting firm, and I still did it for business management, and I tell my clients is that we have self-employed people use their self-employed pension plans in order to fund their pension plan. So they're able to buy real estate using their pension plan. So that's one of the things that we suggest to do, and it helps build your pension. Plus, you're able to buy property with that, and pension plans provide another added protection against lawsuits and things like that too. But individual, yeah, I haven't heard of IDAs. I mean, I've heard of funds. A bunch of us, I did it, where a bunch of us in our 20s got together and we created our own little. I would say not real estate investment trust, but we created our own little fund where we all came in with money and we use that to buy property and stuff like that. So we call it crowdfunding now, is what it's called. So, I mean, a lot of people do that. Other races, another thing that I want to point out that we don't do like other races, especially Hispanic Asians, is that you can get 10 people on a loan to buy property. They go in it together to buy property. And that's one thing that we can also do as a Black community is start trusting each other, and as a family, get on a loan and buy properties together. Because other races do that all the time. They pull their resources together. I mean, I seen one deal, there was 10 people on that loan, and they pulled the resources together and bought that piece of property. And then they did it again, and they did it again. So I think that's one thing too, is for us to come together and start doing that and not keep that, unfortunately with us, we have the slave mentality because, our ancestors back in the day, they had us compete against each other, you had the house versus the cotton, slaves and everything. They always had us competing against each other. So we lack trust. But now I think we can't let that, what happened to us past, to affect us now. We have to start trusting each other and start doing deals with each other, start using each other. And I like to point out that what we can do is start encouraging our athletes and our entertainers, to start putting their money behind them. We support them. They can support us. They can start using Black realtors, Black professionals, Black wealth managers, Black business managers, buy Black businesses and put that on their platform. Because when others start seeing that, other races, when they want to go buy Asians and Hispanics, when they want to go buy a house, a mansion or what have you, right? They demand to use their own Asians or Hispanics to help them with that property. Our people, LeBron just bought a house out here and he didn't use a Black person for that. Other races demand to use their own. And so I think that another thing too is, you're going to say Black Lives Matter. Well, you want to have a really matter, put your money behind that, support Black businesses, because that's another way to decrease the gap of wealth, is that it increases Black business owners in their business, they can buy real estate. They can move into the middle class and the higher middle class and into the wealthy class if they have business, more income. And they have a great platform for it. I mean, John Legend in 2020 had tweeted, it went viral. He tweeted that, he was upset about the Texas, association was going to, fix their, help with racism and real estate by saying, we're no longer going to use the word master bedroom. Okay. And so that's how we're going to address this, our way of addressing racism. And then he tweeted, that's not the problem. The problem is you guys are steering us. You don't give us access to the properties. I'm paraphrasing, access to property and things like that. And then my question was, quite honestly, well, who realtor were you using? Were you using a Black person in the first place? The part was steering you and not giving me access to properties? Just asking. But he went viral with that tweet. So imagine if him still saying, tweeting just about, master is not going to, cut it. And he even, with that tweet, then National Association of Realtors invited him to be a keynote speaker. And he was putting it back on us realtors that we need to be held accountable in order to change things. But I take it further. Who has more influence? Who can really change things? Who has the money and power behind them? Because it takes money and power and influence to get things changed. Athletes, entertainers, you got the money. So instead of, using, the different types of business managers and wealth managers, when you show the public and show kids that, geez, we can be other than rappers and things like that. We're doctors, lawyers, accountants, stuff like that. If they see that you're using those type of professionals, and then people won't think that working with us is lesser than. I had posted the owner of Compass, Refkin, right? He has said that he wants his realtors, since African Americans represent 14% of the population, he said, okay, I want you guys to intentionally use 14% of your budget working with, African Americans, right? So I posted that, and usually here, most of the stuff I got from that was, why should I be forced to work with, work with people who provide inferior service and inferior products? Now that conception about us could change if our black wealthy people really use their platform and really start supporting us.
Amen to that. I have one last question, Thor, and then I'll turn it over to you. This again is from Omar. Do you have a podcast talk show curriculum or have published?
I do have a podcast, and I do have a podcast, and I've done shows, and pretty much what we do, because I'm also president of Women's Council of Realtors, so we put on quite a bit of educational things that I host and produce. So I do have that on a channel, and I will put in the chat box my Linktree website that, you can see my videos and my podcasts and things like that. But yes, I am getting more to stop being shy and talk more and start having more steady podcast shows and Zoom meetings.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Taunee, and thank you, audience, for your great questions. And I will turn this back over to Thor.
Thank you, Mary. I can't imagine a moment in your life, Taunee, that you were shy. But anyway, get that podcast.
I'm an introvert. This is easy for me, but in public speaking, in person.
Yeah.
You never know. You never know.
We all get nervous. Even the best of them. So Mary, do we have a survey we wanted to give to the group?
Yes, it is just gone up in the chat right now.
Okay, excellent. Everybody, if you could pay attention to the survey, this is really important because we appreciate you spending your Friday evening with us and listening to these wonderful folks here. And Honeycutt Foundation is curating all these workshops, and planning for future workshops is not only based on what we hear and what we think is an important topic of the day, but what you have to say and what you suggest and your concerns and your interests. So please, if you don't mind, please just give us a few minutes of your time to look at that survey and complete it so that we can create additional really great, intriguing, interesting workshops for the future. So let's just give everybody a couple minutes to do that. And Dr. Honeycutt, I'll turn it over to you. And Edgar, my screen is showing the slides a little blurry. I don't know if there's an adjustment on that, maybe refresh it or something, but I'll stop talking and turn it over to Dr. Honeycutt while people do their survey.
Well, thank you very much, Thor, and thank you, Dr. Canton and Miss English. We've been schooled by Miss English in this area of racism and housing. I just love it. I mean, she just flows with the information, and it's so erudite and oh my goodness, I'm gonna have to use every adjective I can find to express how grateful we are that you were our guest today, Taunee English. Yeah.
Thank you, Doctor.
I mean, good debt and bad debt. Using your points to pay for hotel costs. I'm gonna have to get that one down, Taunee. Okay?
And airlines. And
airlines. And a black bank in California. Okay. And then the clarification with Prop 19 and the whole capital gains aspect of it.
That's a big one.
Quicken loans, the digital loans. Just how to become a real estate person at 18 years of age and older. Because see, I see a lot of older people selling real estate. And when they leave their other job, then they do the real estate job, Taunee, okay? And if they have to take a cane to get over there to get to the property, they're gonna take the cane and go there and sell that house. Do you hear me? I'm teasing, but I do want you folks to understand, we must act to make things better for our communities. We've had, Taunee gave us so much valuable information today. I would like to ask you to apply what she shared with you to your life and take care of your business, okay? And for God's sake, some of you do this with me. When you go into a foreclosure, you call me about 3 weeks before the house is going to be sold or taken away from you. Now, I'm pretty good at trying to find some people like Taunee to try to help you save your house, but could you let me know up front, like 3 months back so that we can kind of help you save?
Or just a month.
Thank you, Taunee. Let's be real. Let's help one another. We want to help you here at the Honeycutt Foundation. Okay. The other thing I'd like to ask you to please do is share what Miss English said with other people. Okay, help other people. This is what our mission with the Honeycutt Foundation is all about as well. And if you know a Black celebrity, remind him or her to use Black real estate people. Okay, Now, join us on July 30th as we look at another topic in our racism series. I want to personally thank you for joining us tonight. And I want to say to you, good night and God bless you. Take care.
Question, Mary, do we have the slide that has like all the links to the resources? Or are we going to email that to the attendees?
Yes. I am going to be putting it on an additional slide for all the attendees and for anyone who did not participate. Yes, ma'am.
Why am I a victim of my skin when black is the skin that I live in? When you appraise my home, you undervalue me. You heard that a black family wants a new home, and you claim that it will bring the value down. So you convince that homeowner to sell that home cheap, because the truth is you don't want blackness around. Your money goes up, but your love goes down. Enough is enough. Don't cheat me out of my home. Enough is enough. Don't undervalue my life. My home is my health. My health is my wealth. Oh. Enough is enough. Enough is enough. As I walk around this city, I see how gentrified it's become, pushing their black families further and further away. They say, black man, you don't belong here. You aren't allowed to live in this area. This happened in history, and it's happening today. Enough is enough. Don't cheat me out of my home. Enough is enough. Don't undervalue my life. My home is my health. My health is my wealth. Whoa, yeah. Enough is enough, yeah. Can't run me out of my city. Don't undervalue my life. My home is my health. My health is my wealth. Yeah. Enough is enough.
Wonderful.
All right, beautiful.
Thank
Dr.
you,
Honeycutt, do you want to
thank
send
you.
us off with some
I
blessings?
just want to say you are absolutely magnificent. Thank you. There's that wonderful Dr. Carolyn Scott. That's one of my sisters over there who is
Oh
standing
my
behind me.
gosh.
She's
Hello.
wonderful too.
Oh my
Thank
God,
you.
I love that. Yeah, oh.
I know, isn't she
Trouble
brilliant?
is my, well, oh, yeah.
But now,
It's
wait a
awesome.
minute, Taunee, this young lady is going to be producing a new song for each of our events. Mary Rivers, in her wisdom, said to me, you know, you always like to employ young people, old folks too, okay? But she said, why don't you ask, this is Mary's idea. Why don't you, that's why when I have a team like this, Taunee, I mean, I'm getting ideas all the time. I have to try to process them. I
And
mean,
you're quick on those too, and you jump on those ideas
not in my
fast too.
face, somebody's in my face. Okay, Joe's saying something. It was Joe who said, no, it was Omar who said to me, you know, you need to be Dr. Straight Talk. Because the more he talked with me, that's how I got the Dr. Straight Talk. And Mary helped me to now try to get the name so that I don't have other people trying to get up on my name. Okay. But, you know,
trademark it.
Taunee, yeah, that's it. And that's what
that's her name now.
Yeah, so that's my name. So I go by Dr. Straight Talk. Okay. And it's really interesting when I was talking, Carolyn, to Reverend Banks today. Okay. And he mentioned you, and you were trying to find a place for a young man who is trying to do a trucking program, but he needs a building. Okay, so I didn't have a chance to send that out to the group just to let them know. If you know of a building called, you know, let Dr. Carolyn Scott know so that she can inform the young man who is trying to do this program, but he needs a building. So this is what, if we can just share.
Can I help you with that one?
Yeah, did you get it?
Yeah. So he's looking for property for the truck drivers. He's national already, and he has supervisors on the East Coast. He's looking for properties to train the drivers on here. He has properties in Vallejo, and he'd like a building so they could take a break, or, you know, if they need bathroom, need water. So he'd like either a building, or he'll put a mobile unit on that property. But the amazing thing, he's paying his drivers top dollar. The least they make is $8,000 a month. The most is 12. And this is a young African-American, and in his early 50s. And he's so excited for helping San Francisco and the Bay Area. Wow. But he actually is, he's got workers on the East Coast, mid-states, and all. He's doing great.
Is he looking for them to have a place to go in different areas?
He's looking for just a place so they could train driving the truck, learn how to drive this long haul big rig.
What about churches? Churches they tend to, churches, churches are the best places, and they, you know, you don't have to pay much to them, but they appreciate any extra income, and their buildings tend to be empty, you know, throughout the week. And they have the big, you know, they tend to have big parking lots and stuff like that.
We haven't found one so far in San Francisco. There may be, though, a piece of property, Dr. Honeycutt, over near you at the shipyard. Someone called him today. Excellent. So we're waiting to hear back from that person. They said Monday they'll reach out. And hopefully, we were looking in Colma, Brisbane, South City, because we don't have a lot of vacant property with a building on it, or that we can put a mobile unit on.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Would you need to put a mobile unit if you get the building?
Yeah, if there's a building, we won't need a mobile unit at all.
Because right now, because of COVID, I mean, there's so much commercial property right now that's vacant, you know, and right now we're pushing on the state, you know, legislative to convert a lot of these commercial buildings into residential. But there's a lot, I think it's good deals right now on commercial buildings.
I'm going to go back and pick up your number, and we'll give you a call.
Carolyn,
yes.
Taunee does commercial stuff too.
Okay, wonderful.
What she does, you know.
Along with her daughter Tia, though. I'm not gonna leave out Dr. Honeycutt's daughter now.
Well, they work together.
I work with her. I'm not gonna let that, you know, Miss Tia now.
She says, thank you.
Got you.
Thank you.
Got you.
Yeah, well, you know, they love each other, honey, and they support one another. So
well, thank you, team. Okay. Thank you so much.
But Carolyn, thank you. Thank you for being here. And you know, you know what we're trying to do, Carolyn, please get the word out to the ministers. That's why I was really excited when the Reverend said to me, I like your book. I'd like it to go to all the ministers so that we can all get on the same page and really talk with these young people. This is what this kind of a program allows me to do, to find the people. It was, as I said, it was Omar in a conversation with him that from and Carolyn, Omar is part of what Valerie is doing through our organization PWIC. So you know, just talking with people opens up all kinds of doors, and when God gets behind it, it's a done deal.
It is.
Deal.
Well,
okay.
Thank you. And I'm hoping maybe to tap into you and your team because we plan on doing wraparound services. That's a lot of money for young men and young women that have never had money to be making that much a month. So we want to do wraparound services, financial wealth building and investment. So we will be coming back to you, Dr. Canton and Miss English and Mary Rivers. Hello, I get to see you for the first good time. Hello. And Thor, for folks like you of excellence, I want you to speak into the lives of these young people. They are so excited. They're so excited, but we want them, we're not going to throw them into it. That would be a setup for failure. We're going to walk them into training, grooming, and the financial wealth building, investment, and what to invest in. So we'll be coming back around. So those are the things I would love for you to be sharing on and around with racism and the dangers they need to look out for, as well as the wonderful things they could invest in that would help their community as well as themselves.
Now, Carolyn, you need to understand that our next topic is going to be education, because what we are doing is looking at what our participants say they want to learn about. Education is a big piece. It's going to take me about 2 weeks to find the right person for that, but I've got some good leads. And if anyone has leads, please get in contact with me. Oh, Tawnee's finger's up. I know that something's coming.
Yeah, I'm sending it to you. You know, Arrow Investments, they have started their Arrow Investments is a Black-owned wealth management company, and they have the first Black-owned mutual fund, and they're aspiring Black investors. So to get them on you as your speaker would be great, because they actually are showing young people how to invest, and they actually create their own.
That's perfect. Taunee, send me that information. Okay,
Yeah.
that's
excellent. And you know the person who owns that, you know, one of the owners is the Black woman who's married to George Lucas of Star Wars.
Oh yeah, I know. I've seen that woman. Oh yeah, she's wonderful.
She's one of the owners of it.
Oh my God.
Oh, that's good news. That is really good
Miss
news.
English, I just want to say that is an excellent choice.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good news. That is good news. So we will
be Omar. Omar's on the line. Yay!
I know, we get to see his face.
Oh, he's wonderful. Oh, fine. How are you? This man is brilliant. Okay.
I just been absorbing all this great wisdom, and I wanted to say that Susie Armand doesn't stand a chance. Look, you should give her a run for her money. In particular, we need a Black representation of intellectual excellence in the area of wealth building, and you represent that.
Thank you.
As I listen to you, I could easily see you being the Oprah Winfrey of wealth building and wealth creation, and use your intellectual capital. Use your intellectual capital. I need 2 or more in agreement for that now. Yes.
Now, Taunee, you have to understand that Omar is an advisor to another group that I am working with. It's a diversity. The name of it is Diversity Collaborative. Okay. With Dr. Denise Strong, and she's out of New Orleans, Louisiana. And these women can do diversity like nobody's business, but they rely and are counting on Omar to help them fine tune what they do in terms of that. So, but Omar's, he's got a lot going for him. Okay. He's amazing.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
I missed the first conference, but I said I wasn't going to miss this one.
Thank you. Thank you. The next one, though, Omar, it is education. I think you've given me an idea, Taunee. We may have to break it down into education in different areas. I was thinking about trying to do education in public schools, since so many of our young people matriculate through these schools and they still don't have the skills they need to get a halfway decent job.
No,
So,
they don't teach you how to balance a checkbook or anything like that in school. You don't learn that.
well, see, and then in Dr. Canton's area, you don't get the real lowdown in terms of what happened to us historically. I mean, I'm picking up books right and left because I'm trying to say with my new book for girls and young women, I want to talk about all those other countries. I picked a book up that talks about the history of Iran because people don't even know what Persian people are. And my supervisor is Persian. Okay. They don't know what China. I picked up a good book, concise book on China. I've gone down the line.
China is the model to look at, though they're gangster. Okay, China's no joke. Wait,
and then the Philippines.
Wait, we're still live on Facebook. We're still live on Facebook.
Yes.
Oh, are we?
Yes.
Yes, we are.
Oh, okay.
I just realized.
Well,
I'm like, wait a second now.
Look, before you go, Dr. Scott, you might want to check in with the San Francisco African American faith-based group. These are the 20 churches that dispense food throughout the city in San Francisco.
Yeah, I'm connected to them and I meet with them on Thursdays when they meet.
Yeah, maybe you get Dr. Butler to stand for that.
Yeah, Dr. Butler and Derek.
Okay.
Let's do this. Let's do this. We were gonna
let's leave, and can we come back and just talk about our next steps? And for those of you on Facebook,
you can just stop the Facebook recording. If you just stop the live.
Okay, Mary, can you stop the live?
There you go.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, that's good because then they get a chance